To my left is Morenci, and down the canyon just 6 miles and 1,000 feet below is Clifton. One senses the isolation of Clifton and Morenci, the twin mining communities nestled in the Coronado Mountains. The history of this area has been a history of struggle, labor struggle. Since the turn of the century, when the Clifton-Morenci district was the first major copper producer in Arizona, strikes by miners have been common. Possibly the bloodiest labor battle in the history of Arizona was a strike in Morenci in 1903. There was also the strike of 1915, when almost 5,000 miners went on strike, paralyzing production for 5 months. In subsequent years, the copper unions would continue to demand better working conditions and higher salaries. In 1955, the miners in Morenci went on strike, demanding a better health care plan, one that would include free penicillin shots for their children. Traditionally, it was the men, the striking miners, who formed probably the most visual symbol of the strike, the picket line. But behind the men, behind the scenes making food for their husbands, fathers, and sons, were the women. Today, they are alongside their men.
I've pulled picket for my husband a lot of times, several times. I got in a few bad situations, but I still pulled my picket for my husband.
Most stories about unions begin with the strike, and from the union's perspective, they have ended in victory. But the strike of 1983 has been different. Almost 2 years have passed and the striking copper miners have not returned to work. It's been almost a year since the replacement workers, the non-unionized miners, voted to decertify the unions at the Morenci Phelps Dodge operation. During this entire time, despite the obstacles, the picket line has been maintained. Within the first week of the strike, the Phelps Dodge Corporation won an injunction that limited the number of miners who could appear on the picket line to 5. And that restriction became the turning point for the women, who decided to join the men on the picket line in support of the strike.
And the way we were treated, the way our men were treated, we decided they needed some help.
Before, the wives never pull picket. The husbands would always pull picket. Now some have to because some of the husbands have left.
On this day, Irene Diaz is packaging food to distribute to low-income residents in Clifton. This is the first time she has participated in a strike, even though she's lived in Clifton all her life. Strikes in this area occurred almost routinely every 3 years when the labor contracts were renegotiated. But in this current strike, the Phelps Dodge Corporation decided to keep operating, this time with workers who crossed the picket line.
In my opinion, PD wanted to make a point to begin with. They wanted to break the unions to begin with. That was their goal. Now, that's my opinion, personally. And they haven't succeeded yet. The people are still standing together, and as long as the people stand together, you've still got your chance and your hope.
Anna O'Leary joined the auxiliary shortly after her husband, Dr. Jorge O'Leary, was fired from the company-owned hospital for supporting the strike. Anna said the women of Clifton embraced her with kindness and support. She has been an active member of the Women's Auxiliary ever since.
I don't think I would ever see my mother out on the picket line. And for a long time, I hesitated to go there. A lot of things were said about the women on the picket line, that was a man's job. What were they doing there, mingling with men? For a long time, women were excluded from the union meetings. And for a long time, I didn't participate because my husband didn't think it was proper, etc. Little by little, that attitude has changed as, you know, women take more of a decisive role in the strike.
It's been almost 2 years since the strike began, and even though the strike supporters say they will maintain their struggle to the end, many families have moved, others have separated, and still others are thinking about leaving.
As bad as it seems, I think we're going to have to leave town too. But we're just trying to show them that we're still hanging in there.
Hang in there, that's what they all say. On this day, only Mr. and Mrs. Casillas formed the picket line, a far cry from the early days when dozens of union supporters walked the picket line. But still, they refuse to say they've lost the strike.
I go back to an old saying that was from Cesar Chavez, that a strike is never lost, it is only abandoned. I think in the long run, the people will benefit regardless of the outcome of the strike. We've had a rude awakening. Before a father, the best favor he could do for his son is to find him employment with the company. We don't see it that way anymore. You can bet your bottom dollar that these fathers and mothers will not encourage their children to work for a company, especially one such as this one. They're going to encourage them to go out and find work elsewhere to get an education, and this is our benefit.
One gets the impression that the original reasons for the strike have been forgotten in this bitter 2-year struggle. Some people say they want to return to work just so they can quit. Whatever the outcome of the strike, the way of life for these people, copper miners for generations, has changed forever.